is a lighter session. I'm not here to sell you anything, not the other presenters.
Excuse me, can I meet Dave Melgard? Can I ask, what does CPT stand for?
Good question. Multi-definitional title. In the early days it was called Collingwood's Premiership.
But that didn't work, clearly, right?
Capacity planning, performance tuning and testing service. Formed out of Jerry Tubman was our founder, and he had a small firm called CPT Consulting. Selling the black arts. Hopefully, like I say, this will be. Sorry, one moment. I'll do a little intro to CPTs. You've heard the titles, so that will give most of the way anyway. How we see ourselves. Black arts, I should have done a surf on the web first before I chose that title. So we'll go through that and I'll give you what I thought. I'm not going to say black arts. Then to talk a little bit about what we see, what we do. So we pride ourselves and value ourselves on our independent experience that we bring to the market. We're not typically vendor aligned, we don't sell software or hardware. So it allows us to have a little bit of a unique perspective in how we interact with clients. However, what Roger and Parsi talk about, I think you can see a lot of parallels with what we're saying and they're seeing it and seeing it from different. Go through what we will see, let's see as the business drivers to the problems that we all see and deal with, and why sometimes our clients don't listen to us or don't see things the same way. And just some, what we see as observations and how we can get around and how we can help everybody do successfully, our clients. CPT, we've been around since 1993. We're on the Australian Stock Exchange, about 200 people. Annual turnovers around about 40 million. Last year we had, I think it was about, for the first time, almost 50% of our income came from overseas, predominantly North America and Europe. There we've slowly established footprints. We're still a very small organisation, but slowly getting that message across in different regions of the world. And blowing our own little trumpet, and collectively as a nation, that's Aussies scaling IT successfully to the rest of the world, which is really a good story for Australia. As I said before, we're independent. We aren't sort of partners to vendors per se. Our consultants are typically around about 17, 20 years experience, and a lot of them are globally recognized. They look on us as experts, trusted advisor, independent, helping them sort out, okay, I've got all these people and all these solutions telling me I should buy this and do this, but what is the best one to go with? Like I said, oops, I should have done the surfing first. Mind you though, so this wasn't what I meant by black arts, as I was saying. However, we've probably all worked on a few projects before where we've had partners working with us, and maybe we've seen a bit of propaganda and persuasion and all sorts of arts perception and things like that. That's not what we're here to talk about tonight. Black arts, as I prefer to call them, are those rare and specialist services. Capacity planners, performance testers, performance tuners. And if we think about large organisations, the banks, the telecoms and others, you think about how many people out of those IT fleets of people are performance testers, are capacity planners. Very, very much usually minority. Steve, there's probably, if you have a place in your life with one capacity planner or even no capacity planners, or it's been outsourced to IBM and there's a group of IBM servicing umpteen clients. Just the mere presence, everyone exposed to these paths through various backgrounds. We know that not everybody's going to be a capacity planner or performance tester or performance tuner. It takes a certain sort of person and a certain sort of money. So, what Parsi talked about, as I mentioned before, you've seen the guy wave of outsourcing came along, selected, and then all of a sudden it's going offshore, testing all of a sudden is being outsourced, development, you name it, even architecture's gone, multiple partners, multiple locations. All of a sudden what used to be a simple environment where you need a DBA, you go over and say, okay, this can you do this, no worries. Now it's suddenly turning to, have I got the right time zone? Do I have a work code for it? Is it in their contract? Are they going to do it? Is it the right sort of person? And then all of a sudden, other technologies come into it. So we've gone from a fairly homogenous and simple IT environment to a complex environment. And it's getting even worse. Now there's cloud and now there's big data and everything is a service. And tomorrow we're going to wake up one day and there's some new thing that's arrived. Everybody's going to get onto constantly line that force. Businesses are trying to deliver change into an ever more evolving, complex environment, and we need to try and meet their requirements whilst preserving the business. So, from our perspective, what do we see? As I was talking about the firefighters. So we typically get called into environments when the problem is at crisis point. It's, they can't work it out. Basil was talking about, the network's typically guilty until proven innocent. That's never the application. And all these silos of groups blaming, pointing, and no one knows it. It's great for us. It's a great adrenaline rush for our guys who love being heroes and all that sort of thing. But as we say to our clients, this is not where you want to be because you're gambling with your reputation. The slide before, you saw how much it costs for outages and reputational damage and share price damage. It's not where you want to be. So as that sort of independent, we have that viewpoint looking at problems, we see the environments, we see the vendors, and we get insights into where are these problems happening. Thus we try and sort of look further back. Okay, you've got the problem today, but why do you have the problem you've got today? Where did it originate from? What page in the SDLC wasn't open or didn't exist, whatever it is. Constantly, almost to one, black arts, not repair, or they just don't exist. But we don't do capacity planning, we don't do performance testing, the vendor does or something like that. And we don't have an environment, whatever. We just put it in. However,
the best one is we don't vendor, is the vendor that's the force.
Correct. Absolutely. I think the vendor did us. Then at the same time, they want to, sorry,
Did the fine, correct?
Then at the same time, of course, they're wondering, why isn't it working? Delivering to my expectations. It's not meeting the SLAs. If I had $1 for every time we've gone into a client and say, oh, it's slow, it's not working. What's your SLA? Oh, we don't have one. How is it slow? Getting all those sort of arguments. What are they gambling with? Their reputation, of course. And then there's is it going to scale? Okay, it's slow now. Bought this UV package and somebody told me it's only going to handle 300 people. I've got 3,000 users on it. Why won't it work? So, and then they wonder why costs. And then of course you see the other side of the sale with IT, it's all IT involved. Can't engage them, they won't talk to me, they're too slow, they're too expensive, they just won't do what I need them to do, and they will muck it up. Anyway. So we see a constant, really, unfortunately for all of us, the business has always come to that conclusion where they know IT are going to muck it up, but it's more important to get the change into production so they can meet their marketing and everything else to say, yes, we have the capability. It might not work, I'll throw everything at it, including the kitchen sink, fix it in production. But in that traditional of let's make it work first before we put it in, seems to be being challenged. So, IT, as we've seen as well, has gone through a bit of a transition. Once upon a time, the CIO was God. He sat at the board, and the organisation hung on every word that he said. Unfortunately, that has significantly changed now, and it's likely to get a lot worse. Typically now he's been demoted, no longer reporting directly to the CDO. The amount of discretionary spending we're seeing as well as the CIO is being seriously retained and constrained. And business now more often than not are funding projects themselves piecemeal. Business Dave's rightly said, let's face it, it's the business who run the business, who earn the money. IT now being relegated to a little bit like accounting. It's a function within the business that serves the business. So we're not so special anymore, we're just a facilitator of the business. And what do we look at? What's still in-house? How many IT organisations are now pared down to the minimum? Everything else is gone. So it's just really what they need and what they consider their core. You can argue rightly or wrongly about whether that's a good thing, but I suppose organisations are now seeing it as a commodity. It's a service provider, and I provide we look at cloud and things like that, software as a service, and software provider. Gone are the days of doing it themselves. What do we see the drivers continuing? We want to do it cheaper, we want to do it faster. How do we manage complex change? It's getting harder and harder and harder. They want us to help to stay ahead of the competition. Less time to do what we think needs to be done to do it properly, and time to do it right. Always time to do it twice. And testing always suffers, projects run late, requirements vague, and we're expected to deliver narrow SLAs, doesn't work that like it. So we see a lot of those problems where no non-functional requirements either are vague, don't exist. Quite often we see SDLCs where they're mandatory, absolutely mandatory, and no one enforces them. And they let the changes go all the way through production, and then they wonder why it hasn't worked. So we're expected to preserve that end user experience. Great. We're the guardians. We're expected to minimise the risk. So what do they want us to do? Effectively, they just want us to do our job. Okay? Without negatively impacting the business. Drivers, as we've probably seen before, they want to get it in. Can't wait. Has to get ahead of the competition, which is understandable. You look at banking, you look at telecommunications, everybody wants to get ahead of the game. They want to be the first to do the next thing. But, sometimes what we consider important from our perspective, design, scalability, etc., sometimes gets lost in the rush. They don't understand how the technologies that underpin their systems, whether they'll scale, whether they're fit for purpose. Sometimes architecture is being outsourced along with the solution, and they get what they pay for. We see all the fragmentation, silos of activity. Tazi had that good slide before where it's not my fault. The user experience, they suffer and everybody's saying everything's okay, whereas collectively it's not okay. We had a classic case at one of our clients overseas, and we were sort of in there doing diagnosis, and we were monitoring the systems and saw the JVM at home. And so the Oracle guys were on site, and we'd just come out of a meeting because we said to the guys, look, you can't get the production support guys to do anything else, right? You're going to have the system slow down. So the meeting guy said to us, the business is that cheesed off now, they don't even bother ringing up because IT is that poor in responding to them. So we rushed out of the meeting, rushed to the production support guys, and we said, look, you need to do this, the system's going to slow down. And the first thing he said, no, the users aren't complaining. So, that's the problem. We lose those relationships with our most important people, the end users, because we're not doing that job we need to do proactively as opposed to reactively. Poor relationships, poor communication, and all sorts of conflicts internally. When we get outsources, offshore partners, doesn't always work as it's intended to work. Where does my responsibility start and yours end? It just leads up to a fragmented, as we touched on, limited non-functional requirements, inadequate testing, and then absent or poorly focused capacity planning involved. We see the conundrums where you've got an outsourced provider doing capacity planning per se, and their imperative is different. They're trying to sell hardware, so they'll tell you when you need to buy hardware. Whereas the business looking and say, well, I want to know when my applications are going to start to degrade, not when I need to buy more hardware. And the two aren't always involved. So, how do we ensure that these black arts that I'm trying to provide, when we get the opportunity, be appreciated and be sustainable? sustainably engaged. One thing that comes through is we can't just do what we think is a good job and hope that it's going to be appreciated. One message that just comes back over and over and over again. We need to make sure that the solutions that we provide are relevant. And the business are our stakeholders, so it has to be relevant to what the business does. Just being purely techos, it's a comfort zone for all of us. It doesn't always come constant. We need to be able to talk and demonstrate in the business language. We've got to be important, it's got to be relevant, it's got to be, we want to get in there, we want to solve the problems, but we don't want the business to forget why the problems they invested in have been solved and how they were solved, because we see how things can regress very quickly once you stop doing that proactive and preemptive activity. We see the conundrum, quite often, well, why would I do this? Why would I do performance testing or capacity planning? Because I'm already paying the outsourcer to do it, so why should I pay you guys to do it? That's a tough nut. That's a tough nut, and the greatest sort of imperative to solving that one is a compelling event. You're not where you want your clients to be, and sometimes it comes to that, things like your Virgin Airlines, and then they sort of look at something about this. And then, last point, what they're going to give up and realise. You hope it's not a compelling event like that, the system crash and bad reputation damage, but sometimes that's what it takes. But I suppose, once again, opinion here now, that what we see, a lot of the senior IT people less and less knowledgeable of IT, the business people. So, and maybe that's just all part and parcel of outsourcing and less people, more and more business people being in charge, as opposed to IT people who've come up and know IT and moved into the business side of things. So sometimes even understanding the black arts and the value they bring to the organisation is an exercise and a challenge in itself. So how do we do it? We encourage them. The SDLC, it's easier, and more cost effective. We've all probably grown up with that. If you fix a problem further back in development rather than in production, it's significantly cheaper. So encourage them to embed the right practices in the SDLC. A lot of the environments we walk into when there's problems, if you look at the SDLC, it's all there. It's all there what they should be doing. They don't enforce it. Technical review meetings, change review meetings, design review, people don't show up, no one enforces it. So it just goes through. So a lot of the time they've got the tools in front of them, but once again, you need the right people with the right perspectives, those black art people, capacity people, performance people, to understand, no, this doesn't sound right, this isn't going to work. How do we do that? How do we get that message across? What business does understand is risk. Risk is a terminology devoid of IT connotations as they understand. When you talk about my share price crashing, my systems being down, losing my banking licence, that's a language they understand. So how do we interpret what we see into risk is our challenge. And we've got to make sure the risk assessments are done in the right place throughout that SDLC transition so that the right people are aware of it. It's not enough just for us to do what we do and continue doing what we're doing. The business are going to continue to look for innovation out of what we do it cheaper, do it better, do it faster, as well as making sure that the business doesn't crash.
My comment would be a lot of those observations are typical of the legacy enterprise big end town. The born on the web type organisations, I think, have different challenges associated with them. If you look at a seat or a car sales, for example, their business is IT, right? Even though they're not an IT shop per se. And certainly my experience would be, they're lacking some of the disciplines and that 50-year history that the big banks have got in terms of some of the challenges you've said. It's not because they don't have people. In fact, just about everyone at one of those companies has some form of IT function as part of the job, because that's what they are. They're a pure play technology play. Whether it's Expedia or Netflix or some of these amazing companies that have come up from nowhere in 5 years. So the challenge for them is a different challenge than the IT professional that's been in a bank that's had most of their colleagues outsourced somewhere else or cost reduced, the CIO who used to have the power, as you said before, very rightfully so. So have you got any comments around the challenges of what the Americans call a born on the web company faces as opposed to a big legacy bank?
Sure, yeah, it's a good point actually, because you definitely see those complex environments are born through legacy, where there are thousands and thousands of applications, and more often than not they don't know all the relationships between them. That is part of the problem of instability when changes go in, the knowledge has been lost in the sands of time. There is one client that we're talking to overseas, which you'd almost say that they're games, one of the major games providers, and what we're seeing there is the lack of, so they're new, and the lack of solid IT process, what we would call process, is now really hamstringing them, because they want to consolidate the data centers, but they don't even have a configuration database repository, so they don't know which servers belong to which application, which is obviously fundamental to even trying to realise where the servers are and what they're being utilised for and can I move them. So that's probably our experience today. But you're right, it's a different paradigm, and I suppose what we see in the legacy concept of DevOps, where almost some of the legacy organisations are trying to recreate themselves into a nimble sort of structure, but that's not going to apply to that.
I don't know whether the same thing's happening in the born on the web one, but I've constantly seen in projects where new applications are being developed, they start running late. The first thing that gets cut out is the instrumentation on the application. Now that's the bit that tells us what the application is actually doing, and because it's a non-functional requirement, the project managers are allowed to throw those bits away so they can still get the tick in the box for delivering on time. It's then thrown over the wall to the support people and said, here's this wonderful product, now you look after it. They've got no idea what it's doing because all the instrumentation's been ripped out. Is that happening in the born on the web ones? Are they throwing away the instrumentation when they start running late, or?
I think the rate of change, but the amount of change, because they're pretty much all agile shops, right? They don't have a waterfall legacy. They're used to running quicker, shorter sprints, and therefore the exposure is probably not as great. But their ability to react when something goes wrong is probably bigger, because processes, it's a kind of double-edged sword, right? It's kind of, if it's Friday afternoon and you're in the firefighting mode, as you said, sometimes the process book gets thrown out the window because we're all interested in fixing the outcome, whether it's a rollback, fixing the problem and getting us back up into an operational state. So I think it is quite a different challenge, but the impact is still the same. If I have a poorly performing app, my business is at risk. Netflix is not the multi-billion-dollar company it is today because they don't deliver high-performing apps and they deliver great customer experience, and they're not revolutionising that part of the marketplace without the success they've had, right? So, and that's no different than Telstra or NAB or one of our big legacy enterprise customers delivering a poorly performing app. The revenue's at risk, the reputation's at risk, and that sort of thing. But the way they go about it, I think, is fundamentally different. And I've got a lot of time for Australia Post because I think what Warlock is doing there is a legacy organisation of the digital mailbox and trying, if you listen to what he talks about, how you try and combine the two together. Because the old dogs can learn from the new bucks. Well, let me tell you, the new bucks can certainly learn from the old dogs. And I think that's one of the big challenges our industry is facing at the moment, is how do you embrace that rate of change, but not throw everything out and say, iTool and all that other stuff that we've been taught is just a pile of dog do that it hampers us, because there's still a lot of value in this system.
Absolutely. We see a lot of our clients have to invest in those because the problems that we have, because they're trying to keep up, and they are legacy ones, and change is not going to stop. That's the one thing that's change continue on and on and on. You look at how the banks have transformed themselves, and there's enough older people here to remember when you had to go and beg a loan. When you take your bank in, they put it under the ultraviolet light, and somehow by looking you in the face, they could tell whether it was your signature or not. Now, the bank's on your phone.
change the model. The SaaS model will now come full circle. You've got sales forces out there. You've got your Concur for expense management and all that sort of stuff. Where before you used to buy a SQL app and have to customise the blazers. Right? Yes, now they've got SQL. Yes, AJ's got SQL. But that's because of the legacy app to plug into. Whereas most of the .com or the startup companies today don't have that. So what they're doing is just plugging into the technology that they need when they need it. And you're not customising the blazers. You just change your business process to suit that app. It's easy to do it that way. Whereas banks can't. They've got the process and that's the way it is. So to make that app fit that, square peg and a round hole type stuff. I think now what you find is that's where it's sitting with the whole generation thing of companies as they move forward.
To your answering your question, a different way I should have said too, that most of our clients are large banks and telecommunications, so fortune 500 organisations, the ones who pay anything to keep the systems up. I'm not saying very expensive.
That's sort of screwing the wall, but
Any further questions?